Hi guys, Ronnie here. In this video I'm going to explain a topic that was brought up by one of my viewers, and it's connected with time trialing. So you probably already know my time trial bike. This season I've been quite successful on it, having won every TT that I've entered. And most people, when they look at my bike, they think that it's hugely expensive, but if you look at it in more detail, then actually it's not really. I mean, not compared to the road bike that I ride or even the cyclocross bike. So in this video I'm going to tell you how to build a very fast, very cost-effective time trial bike, and what parts wouldn't really hinder the performance, or put in another way, how do you get a bike that's 99% this fast but costs probably half as much? Not precisely, but you know, a rough estimate. So let's start with the frame set itself. I wasn't really planning to change my previous time trial frame set, but I got a good offer for the whole bike, so I built one from the ground up this spring. And at that point I was really looking at every possible option of basically time trial frames that are available, and then I stuck with Trek in the end. The reason for that is they brought down the price of the Speed Concept frame set massively, and it's a very fast, very adjustable frame set with good handling. I know it very well. It's quite easy to service. The brakes work well. The BB is okay. So yeah, a lot of options in terms of fitting. So yeah, it was the obvious choice. So it costs a bit more than 2,000 euros, depending on where you are, 2.5 to 6, etc. But it's nowhere near, for example, the 7,000 euro sticker price of the BMC frame set, or 20,000 euros for a Pinarello Bolide. So it's a pretty good option in terms of value, because it has all the performance of those bikes. So the frame set is a given. So if we go a bit deeper into that, it comes as stock UCI legal, and there are 6 different stem options to suit your position. Now people say that all these integrated bikes are not very good because they're not adjustable and these parts are expensive, you can't use anything else. Well, again, it's not very true for this bike, because I reckon you can get more variations of position on this one than on any standard road bike. So I said 6 different stems. They're all pretty cheap. The most expensive one comes at 65-70 euros, so that's nothing. I use the long and low one, so the lowest stack, longest reach, because I run a small frame. But anyway, you can change these easily. Then you get 4 different levels of stack here. You can't use any else or any other spacers, but they're all included with the bike. Then it's one of the very few time trial bikes that have an aero bar with adjustable tilt as stock, so that's a good option, because well, more tilt has proven to be more aerodynamic when your hands are closer to your head, so that's good. A non-stock part that I used is this Watchshop arm pad, which is suitable for my very narrow position. But if you don't have that, then a stock bar pad is very good, has loads of adjustment. So this cuts around 150 euros from the price. Then on the aero bar I have this little KH TT mount. This is pretty expensive. You can use a standard plastic one, so you can save some cost there. As you can see, I'm not using bar tape. That saves weight, drag and cost as well. This skateboard tape costs pretty much nothing compared to a high quality bar tape. Then I have this pretty neat 3D printed plug here. You don't need that again, so that saves around 30 euros. What you do need, however, and when talking about a group set, is this SRAM return to control shifter, and it's an absolute peach, and I really like that. So group set wise, for the last season and this season as well, I've been using SRAM 1x mechanical, and for time traveling basically it's all you need. You don't really need a double chain set unless you're at a very extreme course, but usually the time trial courses aren't that way, and if they are, you're better off using a road bike anyway. So yeah, 1x saves cost, saves weight, saves drag, so good stuff. Saves friction as well, if you have the correct gearing on there. What I have here is a pretty on the expensive side, so that's a Red 22 rear mechanical with an oversized pulley wheel system and a British made 58 tooth narrow wide chainring. So these are all pretty expensive items, but if you want to go back to basics, you can just go basically with the return to control shifter. I definitely recommend that because it's night and day better than any friction shifter out there. It always returns to the same position, and you can adjust the position of the blade infinitely, so that really helps when dialing your position and when you want to meet some regulations. Yeah, so group set wise, you could just choose a rear mech. You don't really need a clutch mech unless you run or ride on pretty rough roads. The clutch mechs are heavy and bulky, so they add drag, so you're better off with using this little chain device from Air Coach. It's pretty cheap and it secures your chain on there so it can't possibly fall off. And with the standard rear mech, like even an Apex or a Rival, it's going to work no problem. It's going to take a 32 cassette, so you get more range for those hillier events or those rolling events. Chain wise, I'd recommend to stick with the highest grade chain possible. So I'm using the XX1 chain from SRAM here because of the extra length needed to cover all these teeth. Another place where you can save is not using this link housing. It's pretty expensive, but it's the lowest friction available, but it will work fine with any high-end housing. I wouldn't skip too much on that. Also, using high quality non-coated polished shift cables and brake cables, that's really important for a time trial bike when the routing can be a bit sketchy, although it's pretty good on the Speed Concept frame. Power meter wise, you won't really go very far very fast without a power meter in time trials. What I recommend, the Quark D0 is a very good option, reliable, precise, and it's not very expensive either if you compare it to some other options like SRM, Power2Max, Garmin Vectors, etc. It's the cheapest of the lot. If you get it with aluminum crank arms for a time trial bike, it's a very, very cost-effective option. Also, to skip the expensive chainring, you can just use a standard SRAM X-Sync chainring that's made in a size up to 54, so that will cover pretty decent speed range if you are getting into time trialing. Then what else? I've changed my seat post to the old style higher end carbon seat post from the older Speed Concept. Now I've thought this is going to save weight, but my primary reason for that is my position. So it saved a whole 6 grams, so if you don't need the extra setback of this one, then you can stick with the standard alloy seat post. Then for the pedals, I use Speedplay Aero titanium pedals, which are pretty expensive, but if you don't want the extra weight saving, it's not a huge difference anyway. You can stick with the stainless version, or even more standard zero chrome moly pedal with the aero cleat. That's still going to be probably the most or more aero than a Shimano or a Look style pedal. Then saddle wise, well, you shouldn't really cheap out here because you definitely need a time trial specific saddle for time trialing. Of course, you don't need a $500 saddle like this Dash, which is custom made, but Physique, Tritone or Mystica or whatever it is called, or an ISM, Cobb or something similar, you just really need a split nose, wide nose, so you can be comfortable in that aero position. And then finally I will talk about wheels and tires. So starting from the wheels themselves, I'm running these 2 spokes, which are very fast, very stable, but very expensive as well, so that's not a budget option. What is, however, a good budget option are these head jet blacks that I have here, which I both used. And if you look at the used market, you will see plenty of all kinds of tubular rear discs, but I would recommend not going for those if they're not some good brands, because usually those are very narrow, possibly in the 20 to 22 mil range for the rim width, and if you put any modern tire on there, 22 is probably the narrowest one you will find. It's not going to be very aerodynamic. So if you want a good rear disc wheel, then you should go, I think, for an old Zip 900, or even better a Super 9 if you can find one. I tend to see quite a lot of these used, and the reason why I'm recommending those is that those Zip discs just last forever. Alternatively, these heads are also pretty damn good, and they can be set up tubeless. Same for the front wheels. These are actually alloy wheels with aero fairings, so that drives the coast down, and weight wise they're not very heavy either, so that's a good option. Where I wouldn't really save is the tires. Now when time trialing, it's pretty easy. The Corsa speeds are basically the fastest tire around still after 2 years on the market, and even faster when set up tubeless. So if you have a tubular, then a Corsa speed tubular. If you have a clincher, or even better a tubeless compatible wheel, then still the Corsa speeds. Now they're also offered in 25 mil width in both tubular and clincher and tubeless, so you can fit, if you have wider rims, which is ideal, then you can fit those wider tires as well and still be aerodynamic while saving on suspension losses. Some of you have also been asking about the skewers. I'm using, these are View Speed titanium ball through, basically axles, not really skewers. They save a bit of drag and a bit of weight, but they're pretty damn expensive. So if you're not after those last couple of watts, then they're probably not worth it. Yeah, brake wise, well, this frame has integrated brakes, so no worries about that. As for the brake levers, I really like these SRAM 900s, S900s I mean. Previously I've used the S990s with the integrated cable preload adjustment, but that's not really useful on this bike because it has wedge operated brakes and the wedge has to be in one exact spot. So if you dial in the cable tension with the lever, it will pull that wedge out of its place, and that way the brakes are not functioning properly. So it's completely useless and just a waste of money to put 990s on this kind of bike or with this kind of brakes. So the 900s are the way to go. They have a large amount of pull, very stable, pretty stiff, and super narrow in terms of frontal area. So that's definitely a very good option, better than the Shimano ones, which are a bit on the bulky side. And probably the last part that comes to my mind now is the bottom bracket and ceramic bearings in general. The opinions tend to divide in that. I use ceramic bearings on all of my bikes, but the main reason for that is durability. But in a time trial bike, if you have it just for those time trials, you don't really need that. So what you can do instead is buy some bearings, strip the grease off, put some very light oil in there for race day, for the wheels, for the bottom bracket, and yeah, just use that, or perhaps even without seals if it's dry. It won't last very long, but it will be pretty fast for those couple of kilometers. An upgrade you'll definitely want to make is an optimized chain. So I use molten speed wax and plus the race powder from them for race day, and that creates basically the lowest possible friction in a drivetrain and also makes everything last super long. So that's another cost saving measure. As for the pulley wheels, from these ceramic upgrades, they are the ones possibly making the most difference. The oversized ones are hugely expensive, so that's definitely not a budget option, but you can make some changes and gains with some standard size options. For example, the Kogel ones are not very expensive and they've proven to work and last very well. Okay, so I think I've covered every bit of my time trial bike and suggested some alternatives. If you'd like to know more about my other bikes, then don't forget to tune into the channel and subscribe. It's all for today. Thanks for watching and see you next time.